My name's Jim Morrell. I'm President and CEO for Peninsula Credit Union, and also that's Billy, our marketing director.
Somebody's very happy with your CD rates.
I'm also the Legislative Committee Chair for the EDC of Mason County. All right, just trying to get that same energy going. Before we get started today, we had something happen here in Mason County yesterday. It fortunately turned out to be a hoax, but wanted to take just a moment to express thanks and appreciation to Shelton Police Department, Mason County Sheriffs, the tribal law enforcement, first responders. And also for the administration and teachers that were on campus yesterday that kept the kids into the classrooms and as calm as possible during that episode. So I think from what I heard from Sheriff Spurley, the response was like 3 minutes on campus, which was a terrific response. So thank you. We have some law enforcement and other folks, so appreciate that very much. The other thank yous that I have is today's event is being jointly put on by the EDC of Mason County, the North Mason Chamber, and the Shelton-Mason Chamber, so as well as the EDC, and support from the City of Shelton and Mason County. So it wouldn't happen without sponsors. You get to take home in this beautiful Mason County weather some new shades from Peninsula Credit Union. But our partners at OCCU, you have two of the strongest, best credit unions headquartered here in Shelton. Ryan Drake is here from our community credit union, Billy Thomas and Jennifer Duncan from Peninsula. If you are on the EDC or Shelton-Mason or North Mason Chamber Board of Directors, any of those, or the EDC board, if you could please stand so that we could all say thank you to you all. And if you are an elected official, if you could please stand so we can appreciate your time and service as well. So I think that's all the thanks I have to give thanks for at the moment. Other than one last, I'm referring to her as the Sheriff of Mason County because this is like her farewell tour time right now. Pam Bolts is going to come up and from the North Mason Chamber and say some greetings for you all as well. Woo!
Well, good morning, everyone. Yes, that is kind of this is my farewell on this. I'll be retiring on the 25th of May.
It's a good gig, don't worry about it.
10 days, I know. And the fishing line is hot and ready for me, so I'm excited about that. But I adore this community. It's still my community, my home. And we'll be visiting quite often, so as many of you as I can reach out to and see when I stop back through, I will, and come to some events. We do have a replacement for me, and we haven't informed our North Mason folks yet, so that's happening today, but you will all get to know that person real soon. Most of you know him. And that's about as much as I'm going to let out right now. I want to so badly, but I know my folks up in the north, it'll be like, what? So we are happy to bring together our legislative representatives for this opportunity to discuss the economic development and support of our community and businesses. It was a long session, and they did an awesome job, and we're just thrilled to have them here this morning. With Mason County looking towards our future, the work is imperative to grow and be successful, and these folks help that with that. Being able to have access to our local officials to build those common goals is important for the work that we do in the future of our community. So we want to thank them so much. We're going to hear a few words from them. I'm going to start off the introductions with Senator Drew MacEwen, which is amazing. We have the first time I've got to introduce you as senator, so I really appreciate getting to do that. As you know, Senator MacEwen has been elected to fill the seat vacated from longtime standing Senator Tim Sheldon. Drew served in the United States Navy for 6 years. He is a graduate from the Nuclear Propulsion Program and holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Excelsior College. He is the founder and president of the investment firm Falcon Financial Incorporated and is the managing partner of Mountain Lake Capital, having also invested in other Mason and Kitsap County businesses and also a volunteer for many different things. So I added that little part, Jennifer, because I know that. So welcome, Drew. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Deidre Peterson, President and CEO of the Shelton-Mason County Chamber, and it's my pleasure this morning to introduce Dan Griffey. Representative Griffey began his career of service as a volunteer firefighter and at the age of 16 and was the then youngest EMT in Washington State. He continues now professionally as a lieutenant firefighter with Central Mason Fire and EMS. He's been a volunteer for multiple organizations, including United Way, whose dessert auction is today, and Habitat for Humanity. He has participated in Turning Point Survivor Advocacy Center's Adopt a Room program and served meals at St. David and Shelton. Representative Griffey serves in leadership as Republican Whip Representative and serves on several committees, including Safety, Justice, Local Government, and Transportation.
I have to update that.
I think
I'm
that's
now retired.
Gray in the beard there.
Yeah, thanks for noticing, Drew. I think you have a little less hair.
I do.
And I'm Jennifer Berry. I'm the Executive Director of the EDC, and I get the pleasure of introducing our newest addition to our legislative team, Travis Couture. He is a U.S. Navy veteran and is currently the Program Manager for Lockheed Martin at Naval Submarine Base Bangor. He earned an MBA and a BA in organizational leadership from Brandman University. He has volunteered as well with several organizations, United Way included, again, plug for the lunch, to attend, Kiwanis Habitat for Humanity, and the North Mason Schools. He is a supporter of Turning Point, Survivor Advocacy, and CareNet. He is serving on the Appropriations, Capital Budget, and Education Committees. Thank you for joining us. We are happy to have you here today.
So, as chair of the legislative committee and on behalf of the Chamber's legislative committees and so forth, just another thank you, though, to you gentlemen for the accessibility that you had. Times I'm sure it feels like pushing a ball uphill in Olympia. It is kind of up on a hill, but then it's even farther to get things across the finish line. But I know that anytime I or any of our colleagues reached out, there was a response, whether it was via text or email or from your legislative assistants or what have you. Earlier, prior to the session in December, the EDC's Ledge Committee brought together our partners from the city of Shelton, Mason County, the PUDs, the Squaxin Tribe, and some common themes developed. The first theme was infrastructure, and the first item on infrastructure was water storage. I think as an example of the fact that we have our crap together, a strong number 2 was wastewater treatment. Thank you for and electric supply, right? We all need those things. Transportation, housing to help attract job growth, planning resources for comprehensive plans, detention facilities, and so forth. So our focus this morning for this session is really on the economic development activities that happened in Olympia over the last several months, and our delegations help in, like I say, pushing several of those things across the finish line. The first question for you all, and they did receive these questions in advance, was if you could share one big thing that you achieved specifically for the 35th District in this session, and Senator MacEwen, start with you.
Well, I think what I'd like to acknowledge first and foremost is the three of us worked hand in hand in all of these. So whatever we talk about, we were on it together, and just had a laser focus on everything. Specifically, the governor in his transportation proposal, he punted a ton of projects, including the Belfair bypass, which would have put it out to 2035, if I remember the correct his original proposal. And we met with DOT, and one of the things that I focused on was getting on transportation in the Senate to advocate for this, and gave up Ways and Means to do that. But I think that one of the biggest accomplishments we got was getting the Belfair bypass back to its original schedule. And so, God willing, DIRT will start to move in 2025, and I consider that probably one of our biggest achievements together.
Representative Griffey or Couture, whoever can stand up fast.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Drew said. We did everything as a team, and I think that's why we were so successful. Obviously, really great that we moved the State Route 3 freight corridor up to the left in the schedule. And we had many great things in the capital budget as well, over $32 million in the capital budget, a lot of it, the bulk of it going to Mason County. Unlike Kitsap and Thurston, they have many different legislative districts and legislators they can rely on, but Mason County only has us. And so we tend to focus a lot on Mason County to make sure that it gets what it needs. One of the things that happened is the final phase of the Oakland Bay restoration. Worked really hard to rework the PSAR list, which many thought just wouldn't be done. But we reworked that, and actually, as you look down the list, it's a list 1 through 9. We were number 9 on the list at the beginning of the session, and we're still number 9, except for that number 9 got moved up past number 8. And so only in Olympia do you count 7, 9, 8. Calculator free zone and all, but it's good. It's over $5 million in that project that we're getting right now. It was under threat of losing a lot of the permits that it had. It's shovel ready. It's going to create, anywhere to 80, 100 jobs possibly. A lot of revenue coming in from outside sources into our local economy with additional slips. It helps salmon recovery. It's a good partnership with our tribes and our local community, and it's something that, hopefully soon this summer we'll be able to hang our hat on when we break ground.
Well, this is never fun being the last one because they got to tell you all the fun stuff, but you already knew that. It was a monumental thing to move the Highway 3 freight corridor up where it was, so it has to be mentioned by all of us first. Where the governor conceived it, I really was worried it would never happen. When you move things out that long, and with the inflation on all of our projects, we're nearly $1 billion. I also sit on the Transportation Committee of the House. We're nearly $1 billion over budget on our projects just for inflation this year. And so if we didn't get bypass funded this year with site acquisition money, I don't believe we would have had the momentum to get it done. But what we did, the three of us, and this is a wonderful team, I'm not going to lie, we are a powerhouse in Olympia because we stick together. We met with DOT Olympic Region Director. We said, what can you, if we got you money now, what could you spend this year and what could you spend next year? And they said, if you do these two things, we don't have to do another environmental impact study. If you do these things, we actually think that we can do site acquisition this year. So, with that, we did it. We did exactly what they said they can do, and now what we're going to do is push them to do it. That is the hard part. I gotta say, I'm very proud of all the work that we did on Oakland Bay. We need to finish that project. Finishing, sorry, my timing for claps never works out. I'm like, before I forget to say it, I gotta get it out. But yeah, the Oakland Bay, we had to finish that, and I think it's gonna be just another jewel on for this area. But it also opens up so many other things that we can do. The marina rehab and expansion, I think go hand in hand. And then the other thing I'm very proud of, and each one of us added another one, was the Angleside Water Project. Prioritizing infrastructure, we absolutely did, and I think we had some big wins in this district on infrastructure. And with that, I'll stop talking, but I think it was a great year for all of us.
Thank you. Kind of as a follow-up question to that, and maybe just to help our collective understanding, it may be some of these items, but can you help connect the pipes for us, so to speak, on these items or others, other activities that happen during the session, specifically connected to economic development. I mean, so these things are happening. What if, how does that translate back to what we see directly here in Mason County? Representative Couture's jumping up quickly again. He's
So-
the youngest of the...
Eager.
Which means I'm the fastest. But, yeah, so how does it all connect? You know, in order to have housing, in order to have, you know, brick and mortar businesses, you have to have infrastructure. We got, you know, Kristen came to us really early on before the session, and there were some projects that needed to be done, you know, now, or else maybe they would be under threat. And so we got, with PUD1, we did 3 different water projects, Matlock, Union, Shelton, which equals more housing, which means housing affordability, which means more local revenue, right? And so this is how economic development happens. And, you know, I actually tried really hard when, to work with PUD3 to get some design money for a new substation out where we just annexed. But there just wasn't enough cash in the couch cushions of the capital budget at the end of the day. You know, they cut us off. We had too many wins. But that's something I plan on looking for next year and in the future to help with, because, you know, getting water, power going means housing, means business, means local revenue, and it lifts us all. It's a high tide that floats all boats. So I hope that answers the question.
So, you know, I've always said, if you've heard me talk, this is such a jewel on the Olympic Peninsula that if we build it, they will come. What we have to do is we have to have our critical infrastructure. We have to zone properties for that development, and we have to develop them. And I worked on all 3 phases of that. On local government committee, it's the rules and regulations that you have to follow to actually develop a piece of property or zone a piece of property. We worked really hard on that. We didn't get where I wanted to get, but we did ease some of the pressures on the building permitting process. We've given, I believe, a framework where our local jurisdictions can actually more adequately push the narrative, right? I'm still gonna, you know, I'm following very closely this Angleside annexation and how that's gonna go, because we are going to have buildable lands for housing in Mason County. And so we're going to have to really work on zoning those areas of opportunity. I am a little disappointed we weren't able to get the power infrastructure, right? So you talked about 2 of them. We also need power. But we are committed to working to get PUD3 some money to help them with some of their power distribution through substation design and build. I think we might be lagging a little bit behind on that, but I think we have enough power for the projects that we're working on currently. But any of the really big aspirations in the future, we're going to have to really double down on that. I really think that fixing the water issue and the Angleside expansion, I think, is going to be a big economic boom. It's going to really help with the Angleside project development. You know, we still haven't seen, you know, the benefits yet of the latecomer agreement out here being waived, and we paid that off a couple years ago. But I think we have lots of opportunities. I think we can all bond behind I think this jail project, right? I think all of us need to get in the room. We now need to take the $1 million that the 3 of us were able to secure. We need to start talking about what this community really wants and really needs. What we're going to be pushing really hard for is a 23-hour crisis receiving facility that would be closely adjacent to the property, not only for the fact that it could develop some positive cash flow for the combined facility, but there's a lot of money available in grants and those sort of things to get a 23-hour receiving facility off the ground. So I'm going to be pushing really hard, and I'm hoping that our county partners, everybody in this room, says, let's figure this jail thing out, and let's figure it out this year. Thank you so much. So
not sure what the original question was. But you know, when you look at our area, yeah, infrastructure is huge, and we'll continue to push for that as we have through the years. You know, but with that, you know, also comes the increased population that we've had, and we can look at how many of you know somebody that's either been in an accident or, God forbid, has died on 101, you know, over the past decade, right? And unfortunately, there's a lot of us that know of someone, and you know, that's part of the increasing growth that we have. And so with that comes other issues. So one of the things we also got done in transportation, there's going to be jersey barriers put from Wallace Nealand to the 101-3 interchange, which will make traffic miserable while they do that. But I think it's going to save a lot of lives, you know. So in conjunction with doing infrastructure and, you know, getting us to be able to build more, we've got to keep in mind the greater impact that has as well. So glad we've got some safety improvements coming that way. That's important. We've seen way too many accidents on that stretch of road that have taken a number of lives through the years. So, but you know, continue to let us know where things are falling through the cracks. You know, we've put a lot of money into sewer over the years, as we've mentioned, the Belfair bypass, and getting these water projects done. Anyone in here that's ever built a home or been part of that process, you know how expensive that infrastructure is. So the more that we can have in place, the better it is for our growth as a community and drawing in that economic development. Look forward to continuing to work on that. And you know, part of this segment asks, you know, what you guys can do to help. You know, we do a lot of these sessions right before we go into session, right? And frankly, it's too late. Telling us in December what you need in January, it just doesn't work. So the sooner we know of issues, the better that we can prepare to get those done. So I would encourage, you know, through your various organizations, the EDC, the Chamber, or whoever else you're involved in, let us know by the fall, you know, what we need to be looking at and what we need to address. That helps go a long ways as well.
Yeah, so building off of that, and Representative Griffey, you mentioned a couple of things that you were hoping that maybe you were alluding to, hoping to see more progress with, like the latecomers agreement and so forth. Can you be more specific about, and there's a lot of wisdom, a lot of elected officials, a lot of leaders in this room. What is the community, to Drew's point, where's the obstacle? Where are things not moving forward from your opinion?
Well, there's
How
a
can we
bunch of
collaborate?
beautiful land out there that isn't zoned for anything yet that can tie into that. So we need to figure out how we're going to zone it appropriately for commercial, industrial. What does the community think we need? We need to zone it, and once we zone it, we can then start enticing and encouraging people to come. So the latecomer agreement's done. We've worked on sewer. We've worked on, you know, we got pipes in the ground, ready to go. Now if we have a project or a process where county, city, everybody gets together and we find ways to zone it, I think that's what we're waiting on.
Senator, those meetings earlier, what does that look like? What would be most beneficial for you and the rest of the team here? I mean, you see things, and it's not like necessarily we have to go and look at the beautiful land, but how can we most effectively come together to deliver and have conversation with the three of you?
Yeah, just reach directly out to us. We'll, you know, we're accessible, and again, just the sooner the better on that. That's helpful, and you know, knowing the specifics of it, we know what the end result will look like oftentimes, but what is really the barrier to getting something done is most helpful. And there's a lot of things we can do without having to pass legislation. You know, sometimes it's just getting in with an agency and talking through some issues. I've done that before, and you know, sometimes there's perceived red tape when there's really not, and sometimes it's legitimate, and we can work through that. So just the sooner we know things, the quicker we can get it addressed. You know, if I could real quick, you know, backtracking on, you know, talking about development, and especially housing, which is a huge issue throughout our state. You know, we're falling 50,000 units short every year based on our population growth and how many we're actually building. We are 50,000 units short every year to maintain what we have, and what we have is not enough. And we're seeing the impact of that, right? The I-5 corridor continues to move east and west and is impacting prices everywhere. And I know Dan and I know Travis agrees with this too, but I mean, from when Dan and I have been first in office, we've been pounding the table about Growth Management Act. It was passed in 1991. Our state's population was 4.5 million. We're pushing 8 million today, and we've never gone back and looked at it. Seriously looked at it. And until this legislature is willing to do that, we're going to continue to see this crunch. And that's unfortunate. And you know, when we talk about housing, we've also got to have an honest conversation there. When we talk about affordable housing, there's two different things. There's housing that's affordable for middle income or entry level first time buyers, and and then you have subsidized housing. And what the legislature typically does when they talk about affordable housing is dump a ton of money into subsidized housing, but they do nothing to really address first-time home buyers, middle income folks. And that's what, if we're gonna have a serious conversation about fixing this, we need to look at that. And I could go on a litany of things, you know, that the energy code has done to increase the cost of housing, that growth management has done, that land use management, the Shoreline Management Act, and we wonder why housing's expensive. And I'd say, you know, going back to the first question, what are one of the successes? Sometimes the successes are what we stopped. One of those was a tremendous increase in the real estate excise tax.
Yeah.
The theory was we'll charge you more for selling your home, and that's going to make housing more affordable.
Yeah.
I missed that in Econ 101, but maybe somebody else saw it. I don't know.
So Representative Couture, your LA is Adam?
Yeah.
Is that right? So Rob, Adam, is your LA?
Amber.
Amber, terrific assets to your team. I can imagine that as a freshman, you probably had a sense, because you knew people, like at how many different things were going to come at you, but when the spigot got turned on, there's probably a whole lot more, right? Was my guess, right?
Yeah.
So my question is you all are accessible, you can reach out, have your phone numbers and so forth. Is that as helpful, or would it be helpful for a combined effort or message to deliver to you? We've seen examples of this happening with the city and the county, the city and the port coming together to try and find common ground. Is that kind of messaging helpful, or would you prefer individual messages from every port commissioner, city council member, county commissioner, and constituent?
No, I think
It's a leading question.
If you have, you know, somebody that can speak for your group, you know, a key contact or something, that would be great. But I'm a millennial, you guys. Just get my phone number. Call and text me. It's totally okay. Everyone else has this number, so why not you? And, I mean, I talk to Ryan all the time, and that's the way I like to operate. I won't speak for these guys. I don't. They're pretty accessible as well. If I don't get back to you, then I always will at some point, right? But call, text, call Adam. Our legislative assistants work as a team, essentially. Like they talk to each other. We're emailing each other as a team all the time. Our PIOs do the same thing. And so, I guess if you're looking for how I like to communicate, just, you know, before you leave here, get my number and text me your name so that I can program it into my phone. And then try not to abuse it, but at the same time, if you need something, Drew's absolutely right. That's one of the first things I learned is if you're, I got sworn in, you know, in January, at the beginning of January, and then people started asking for things, but he's right, it's already pretty much too late. Things have already had to have been being developed before the session starts, and there's some things you can do during, right? But it's a lot more helpful if you have the group come together and have your priorities and have a kind of a plan put together and meet up with us or whatever. I know we met up with Jennifer before the session, but maybe earlier than that, right? So that we can kind of put a strategy into place to make us the most successful. I think that's pretty helpful.
Cool, great. Representative Griffey, follow up on that. The session's over, you're not in Olympia, you're back home here. What types of meetings or gatherings would you turn away or not want to be part of? Or what would you want to be part of once we cut off policies?
Well, after 30 years of marriage, my wife wants me to take her on a significant vacation this year, which I don't
Where are we
blame her. We're going to go on a month-long drive trip in the United States. So I want to see things. I'm repeating something my grandfather told me was the best thing that he ever did when he retired. So other than being not available for that, I'm always available. Like, my heart is here, has always been here. I bleed Mason County. I bleed red, white, and blue. I really want to help. So I think if I worked with us out in the north end a couple times. We had so many people, because we were so successful on capital budget requests. There was so many requests put in, it was miserable to prioritize it, right? We had to come up with a prioritization, because everybody wants their their deal is the best thing in the world. So I always went through a lens of economic development, infrastructure development, on down the line, social services delivery, that kind of thing, and prioritize those things. But as much as, the city, the county, EDC, and chamber can get a priority list, what's going to be our top capital budget requests? If you all have that as your top, and then you prioritize them 1, 2, 3, I'd happy to come to a fall work session if you wish, right? This is maybe doable. This maybe not as doable. This might be something we have to put on a long-range plan, but this could probably be done in a short-range plan. That sort of thing I think would be very helpful, and it would better set us up for success. But again, this year I'm very proud of what we were able to accomplish, and I think it was huge. But it doesn't mean we're done.
So, thank you. On a couple of the topics, we've been talking about infrastructure and housing. Between now and the fall, we're pull together that work session, as you referred to it. What kinds of things can we collectively as a community do to come to that meeting with helpful, supportive information for you to help move something on housing or infrastructure forward?
Well, I think we need to ask the city, how are they going to, and what is their plan on making sure that we have land availability? We should ask the same thing of the county. What is their plan for buildable land availability? We need to put that all into a combined bucket, a combined thought process. We also need to look at if we 100% build out PUD 3, can you provide power to that? And if you can't, then we're going to have to get power for that. We'll have to get them more money for their transmission sites. Water, PUD 1 has done amazing things about making sure that Mason County has water. I mean, they're purveyors of huge amounts of water. The county are purveyors of water. We have to get in the room, talk about what we all want to accomplish, and then look at those barriers that we need to accomplish. We need to know, both the PUDs, can they deliver power? Both all the purveyors of water, can you deliver enough water for these plants? That's the type of thing that I think would help all of us and really move us in kind of a strategic direction where we can have short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals that we're all working together to get, rowing in the same direction, if you will.
Perfect, great. Representative Couture, kind of same question. Would it be most beneficial to come to that fall session with TikTok videos or other information?
Chinese
We tried to ban TikTok, it didn't work out. So when early on in the session, I got a list of Mason County's priorities, but long before that, I had obviously been listening to what I thought were everyone's priorities. And I think, I'm going to tell a little story, but talking with our law enforcement, our sheriff, our Chief Beeson, and everyone else, one of the top needs was we need more capacity, we need a new jail, and we need to go down that direction. And and maybe whether for whatever reason this wasn't immediately a priority for Mason County. Maybe they thought, well, this is too far off, we're not ready for this yet, or whatever. But from my point of view, it was, we got to start having the discussion now, even if it means just doing like the Kickstarter step of, getting $1 million and then go down and work together, everyone in this room, to figure out how we're going to get it done. And so, we had a discussion, it got added to the priority list and we got the money for it, so that's great. But where I'm going with this is that not only talking to us, but talking with each other about what each other needs, because, maybe Sharon doesn't, well, she probably does, but I'm just using it as an example. Sharon doesn't know what Ryan needs, and Ryan doesn't know what Gina needs over at Turning Point, which he probably actually does. But you get my point, right? Or maybe Troy back here working for Shelton, has different needs as well. But, before the step of let's go and each individually in our own little buckets ask for the things that we've thought we need the most, talking to each other, because then you could realize from our point of view how hard it is to prioritize all of those things, and then it really kind of puts you through the exercise of, you know, what is actually important. And I think all of them are important to one degree or another, but some of them kind of the cream rises to the top. So I guess an answer to that question is not only talk to us, but continue to talk to each other. And maybe not just the traditional people in this room you typically talk to, but the ones that maybe you don't, and figure out what their needs are as well. So when there's that synergy happening, that's when good things happen, because then we'll get the real list of priorities, right? And then we can go to work.
Thank you. We did see that synergy come together on a few economic development oriented bills, which I believe all three of you supported. One of the biggest ones was what's called a 0.09 sales tax that's greatly used by the county. It's what funds the Economic Development Council, and it was set to expire in 2032 about. It's been extended out way past my retirement age to 2054. Representative Couture will be in Senator MacEwen's seat maybe by that point. But those are examples of great success and collective success too. With, you mentioned Troy Nichols, Deb Monguia, Dave Arbaugh, the set of team of folks that are helping support Mason County sort of from various entities and organizations is incredibly helpful. Senator, one of the bills that did not pass was a bill around economic development innovation. And it was a Senate bill, and it passed through the House, but it didn't get quite through the Senate. And what we're hearing a little bit is really a desire, I think in this case by Senator Rolfes, from Bainbridge Island, North Kitsap area, to see accountability built into if we're going to be spending these dollars. And Representative Griffey kind of spoke to this. If we're going to be ending the latecomers agreement, what does that accountability look like? What is the community? What do we need to help support you with that says we're going to utilize the monies that are obtained in a good way?
Yeah, well, I think when it comes to the taxpayers' dollars, regardless of what the program is, we've always got to keep that in mind. It's not our money. And, so with that is transparency. So it doesn't matter whether it's funds going to a school district, to an EDC, whatever. Transparency is paramount, and putting forward what those are spent on. I'm not familiar with the bill. It's not something that would have gone through a committee I'm on. So I'm not sure. I can't speak for Senator Rolfes, but I know she's very big on that, and rightly so. So happy to look into that more. But that is key, and I think you have to have some sideboards. And always remember, it's not our money. It is collectively, right? But that's when we get away from that notion that, oh, this is free money. No, it's not. That becomes a problem when people have that philosophy. And I think as a state, we're doing, relatively speaking, a pretty decent job compared to some others when it comes to that. And but we can always stand that improvement.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to the
just really
accountability
quick.
factor?
Yeah, well, I agree with what Drew said, but kind of on the economic development thing, one thing that we do in this state that we should do better at is, putting more dollars into tourism for marketing our state. Our surrounding states put like double, triple, quadruple the amount of money that we put in. We increased the amount of money from like literally a $3 million budget to a $9 million tourism budget, which is great. We tripled it, but that's compared to like over 50 million for like a state like Oregon, right? And so we live in a county where our population explodes during the summertime, and we have a lot of great natural assets that we can use, and that helps boost our local economy. And so on appropriations, I was fighting for more tourism dollars, and I think we're getting there. Another thing is more broadband dollars from the federal government to try to help build that last mile, that rural broadband that a lot of people need in our area. And so there's good things happening, but you got to be accountable for those dollars. And so how do you measure that accountability? So like in tourism, the return on investment is a 33-to-1. That's how you be accountable, is you get something back. And so Sometimes the state spends a lot of money and we don't see the results. We don't get anything back, or maybe it was just an absolute failure. It just depends on what it was. But tourism is one of those, tourism marketing is one of those things where it's like, hey, we know there's a measured, we're getting something back. When we got, you know, a little over $1 million for Shelton Youth Connection, for, you know, new housing for the youth, it came with, here's what you're getting when we house these, you know, homeless kids. Here's our success rates, here's how we get them jobs, here's how we do things. So that's how you be accountable. Is it starts kind of with having the data and the facts available so that you can you know, make sure that when you do take the step of spending people's precious tax dollars, that you're getting something great back in return.
I think it's really important. Did you have a comment too?
Well, what they said, sounds good.
And we had on the .09 sales tax and how that funds economic development, an ask that came to us from the legislature this year to provide stories. And so Commissioner Trask went to work with our county administrator, and there had been some funding for the Port of Grapeview to expand a commercial part of their dock, or I think it was there. And so then Jennifer Barria was able to forward that back to Olympia, and it may not have been the piece that tipped that bill over, but the stories, I think, to your point about, you know, Youth Connection and what's happening there. Sometimes we have these stories and we just kind of like get excited and talk about them ourselves, but please share those with any of us, any of the leaders, the chambers and EDC, because that really helps, I think, fuel things. In a very contentious environment, right? We can come together when we actually hear differences being made. Speaking of that environment, I was given a question this morning when I came in that was not on your pre-prepared remarks, so keeping you on your toes. Knowing what you know about the political environment, are the movements or work that we should be are there movements or work that we should be watching and educating ourselves about that could negatively or positively affect our businesses at a local, regional, state, or federal level?
Yeah. So they wanted to do a REIT expansion, which I think for housing affordability. That's something to watch and to defeat, right? So how are we going to get affordability out of increasing cost? I find this very problematic. There was a bill, and I think it's going to come back around, that wanted to tax, basically appropriate $4.5 billion for public housing. Again, I think we've seen many times the projects. And I believe Washington State is going down a path of building a bunch of houses and putting a bunch of people into local infill and actually making the same mistakes that Chicago, New York, and have made in the past, that they're now bulldozing all of those projects that they put so much infrastructure in. So if we're going to do big monumental things like this, I think it needs to be a public-private partnership where the public side is we provide a little bit of the funding, but we use the privates to make sure that they deliver the projects, if we do such a thing. But I think if we just got out of the way, for the most part, land affordability would actually happen. Our builders will actually get it done. But so there is a lot of things that we got to watch for. There is going to be a lot of tax increases that they're contemplating, because this 9% growth that we got in this budget, while I think it was good that we reduced it from 20% growth in spending, there is still an appetite for a 30% growth and spending, and we have got to really be careful about those things.
Yeah, Dan's absolutely right. There's, be careful what you ask for, right? The more you want the state involved in things, I don't know that that's always a good thing. I think we can do a lot more by being out of the way. You listed on there too, at the federal level, that's just a shit show. Does anybody think things are going well there? We're 2 weeks away from hitting our debt ceiling, and it's just that is a mess. And I think that when you look at that and what we have going on at the state level, this thirst for more and more revenue is a real concern. I was elected in 2012, same year as the governor. Our budget then was 32 billion. Today we're kissing 70 billion. I mean, has yours doubled in the past 10 years, your income? You know, and along this way, and we always hear this argument that we're the most oppressed state in the nation on taxes, disproportionately affecting lower income folks. But yet with every tax proposal that comes forward, there is never, ever relief for people that are being overly taxed. We see no relief for property taxes. We see no relief for sales tax. We're always told we can't afford it. It blows my mind. And when we look at transportation, we've, you know, as a state and as a nation, we've made this push towards more fuel-efficient vehicles, more electrical vehicles. And then at the state level, we're bemoaning the fact that our, on a per capita basis, our gas tax revenue is declining. So we increase fees. I mean, but yet we've had proposals go forward to change how we fund transportation, and it's falling on deaf ears. And so, I guess, you know, part of tying all this in is that yes, we're accessible. We hear you. We might not agree on every issue. I recognize that, but I think largely this community we come together pretty well, and you know, and move forward. And I think sometimes some of the challenges though that we need to address are getting in the ears of some of the other legislators outside of this district that are maybe in some key positions on various committees, and that's going to help further things along as well, because that's important. It's not what gets heard always, but it's what doesn't get heard in a committee is just as important too. So we're happy to partner with you on those, and look forward to working with you.
Great, and we would welcome those partnerships and introductions to those relationships as well, because it takes you know, the entire state and everybody in the legislature to move things forward in a positive way. You're delaying your road trip, retirement road trip just by a bit. I know there's a lot of interest probably on what we can expect in the upcoming special session on drug possession laws, and how can we as a business community help engage in this conversation? What do you need from us in order to do that? And open that for all of you. Wow, the two guys on the end. I can't have one in the middle. But
Yeah, sorry about that. So I have to apologize for something. First thing I had to do, and I didn't do that, is thank our Mason County Sheriff's Department for their response. And I'll tell you, back in Columbine, I was a younger firefighter, and we drilled many times on what we would do and what the sheriff's office would do if we had such a thing, and they implemented it. Instead of waiting outside and setting up a command post, they went in to save children, and I'll tell you what, they need our thanks. So on Blake, here's the deal. Special session doesn't mean we're all going to go run back into Olympia. What it means is all four corners. That means House Democrats, House Republicans, Senate Democrats, Senate Republicans are going to assign negotiators to negotiate it out. We have a three-way agreement, kinda, in principle on what we're going to do on Blake and Blake Fix. The House Democrats are the sticky point right now. And so what is a special session going to look like? Special session is going to, we hear rumors we might come back on the 16th, maybe pass a few resolutions, and then wait until we negotiate out the actual fix. The good news about that is we don't have all of the staff in Olympia coming back to Olympia, so it's a heck of a lot cheaper. Usually you get everybody in the room and you come up with agreement, we come back to vote. There is I think, slim chance we're going to have a statewide fix that is going to work. As long as we have a statewide fix that actually allows flexibility and proper sanctions for violations of the law, I'm there. If we don't, and there is not an ability for Mason County to do things that the way they want, the current bill that we rejected last time, or at the end of session, was absolutely unworkable. It had a more Seattle-centric way to fix things. We don't have near the treatment treatment. We don't have as many public safety staff people. We lack so many other things. We're going to have to do it the Mason County way, and I want flexibility built in. If I was a betting man, I think it's still 50-50 whether we pass a real Blake solution before the July 1st deadline.
Yeah, part of your question was what can the community do? I don't know. This thing's such a mess. You know, real quick, in case you don't, know the whole story, the Supreme Court a couple years ago had this ruling that basically they ruled that unconstitutional are drug possession laws, and so it basically, by doing that, it made it did not make it illegal to possess drugs, hard drugs, cocaine, methamphetamine, etc. So at that time, we passed a slight fix that made it a misdemeanor, and that expires July 1st. That's why we were on this deadline. And that was like the most that the legislature could muster, was to make it a misdemeanor 2 years ago. So that's why this July 1st issue is important. You know, it was a catastrophic failure, and I'm going to say this. I'm not trying to be partisan here. This is reality. It was a catastrophic failure by the Speaker of the House and the Governor to wait till the last day to bring a vote to the House floor and not have the votes in your own caucus to pass a fix. That's facts. There was it 16?
14. 15, sorry.
14 House Democrats did not vote for their own bill. And the Speaker and the Governor have the audacity to blame our side of the aisle for not passing something. That's just ridiculous. The Senate Democrats, Senate Republicans, and House Republicans had a deal that the House Democrats did not like. And the majority of them that voted no have the philosophy that drug possession should not be an illegal act. I got a problem with that. I don't know about you, but that just flies in the face. And you look at the number of deaths that we've had just since the failure of that bill 3 weeks ago. Exceeds any other unnatural death in our state. Last year there was 2,500 overdoses just in King County, I believe. So we need to we've got to get back to some self-accountability. And I think that what is that ultimately at issue here right now is we believe that there should be a punishment component, but there should be a treatment component as well. Okay, and there's others that just believe that there should just be treatment and no consequences. Well, I don't know that I'm all for it. Look, people make bad decisions, find themselves into a spiral of bad choices. They're willing to get help, let's give them help, absolutely. But to give, I don't remember all the specifics on the House Democrat version, but it was like 4 or 5 chances before there was any kind of consequence. That's just not acceptable. And you look at what it's done.
They don't have to complete treatment if they're on a deferral.
Right. It was just a mess. So it's going to be interesting. I know you guys got a caucus today. I've got my caucus today. We'll know more. But it doesn't sound like we've got a deal yet. And this, to me, is just a complete lack of political leadership by the governor and the speaker. If I were governor, guess what? There'd be 5 people in the office hammering this out. And I wouldn't even call a special session until
With
the deal was
locked
done.
door.
Yeah.
You don't leave.
And to be fair, since Governor Gregoire, I mean, I served all of a week with her because the governor comes into office after the legislature does. But everything I always heard about Governor Gregoire, that's what she did. She would bring people into the room and not move the goalposts. We were going to get to this, we're going to get it done, and that was what happened. Didn't mean you always agreed with everything, but this administration, it's very a hands-off approach, and it's frustrating, especially on an issue that is this consequential to the safety of our communities.
Representative Couture, better, worse than 50-50? We're going to have success, what can we do?
Yeah, I don't know.
to help
And
in this?
the problem is because, you know, our side hasn't been invited to negotiate the bill. So what am I supposed to say? I don't know what they're talking about in there. My leadership doesn't know what they're talking about in there. We're invited back to a special session to vote on whatever version they come up with that will pass out of their caucus. Now that's wrong. Our side of the aisle, our caucus, represents 3 million people in this state, or more. And we don't get a say. You guys don't get a say, because we don't. That's wrong. And it can't be a 50-50. We have to do something with teeth in it right now. You guys, I'm so sick and tired of watching the slow motion death in our streets. The catch and release, the revolving door, where people go and they abuse drugs, free to do so, with help to do so, until they die. It has to stop. Nobody wants to go back to the 80s and do the old-time war on drugs, which is what they're afraid of. But right now we have zero balance. It is like the Wild West for drug possession and drug abuse. And sometimes in order to get people the help that you need, which by the way, this bill had no resources to do, it starts with jail. And if we're not really willing to look at that and realize that that's a solution at times, then I don't know what we're talking about anymore. The bill that came up would have allowed statewide safe injection sites, or as I like to call them, drug-funded heroin dens, even for kids, with no parental notification. Statewide preemption for drug paraphernalia like free needles and crack pipes that the state uses your money to pay for and make and give it to people on the street so they can continue to kill themselves. That's not love. That's not compassion. So when we go back in the special session, we have to do something about it. And if we don't, it is one of the most immense failures I've ever seen already on the House floor to allow something so weak to even fail. So will we get something better than that? I don't know. But we need it. And we need it now because it's a matter of life and death. And those people on the street, some of us don't like them on the street because they're stealing from us and, you know, building their tent cities or whatever they're doing. They're using drugs on our sidewalks. But you know what? They're also someone's mother, their father, their brother, their sister, right? They're human beings. But there needs to be a balance between punishment and realizing the problems behind the actions that you've committed, but then also getting those people the help that they need. Help that doesn't exist. We are in an extreme workforce shortage right now, and to have people to staff the beds for our mental health and behavioral health, where these people will have to go, just doesn't exist. It's a fantasy. So yes, we do need a gross misdemeanor, because that's the difference between 90 days or a year, so that we can actually do something to save these people's lives and also save ourselves. This is not a victimless crime. It affects our local economy, our hospitals, our police, our businesses, everything. Literally everything our economy touches, connecting the pipes. This is something that touches every single pipe that is connected in our community.
Thank you, Representative.
Can I just add real quick to that? So the other part that's an issue with this is that nothing stops local jurisdictions from enacting their own law, but that's also part of the problem, right? You could have this patchwork all over the state, and that in Mason County it's much more severe than when you cross the border in the Thurston Center. So that's part of the problem in this whole thing, is that if the legislature doesn't act, every local jurisdiction is free to do what they want to do, and that it's not good to have a patchwork on something this consequential.
Well, over the next few weeks, we definitely hope it. Clearly, it's an emotional issue, and that there's some calm in discussions that hopefully do happen, where there's some compromise, and we get to that point where that can occur, so that there can be something to address the challenge. So I appreciate that. We have about 5 or 6 minutes for some questions, if any of you have those questions. So Deidre is going to help carry around the virtual mic. We're actually in person. We don't have to turn the mic on or off, but she's going to turn your mic on or off right now for questions.
We can physically raise our hand now.
How about that?
And I will kindly remind everyone that these are to be business or economic related questions. This is not our soapbox time, and we've got a lot of other issues to talk about in our community, but today we are here to talk about business and economic development. So if there's anything that you would like to ask our legislative delegation, now is your opportunity to do so. Eileen.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for being here today and helping us understand this. The stuff you were just talking about, you said you're going to a special session. How will we know, like, is there someplace we can go to get the information that you guys are going to come up, like, whatever decisions are made or whatever, like that? Is there someplace, a Facebook page, a website, anything like that?
So all of our legislative websites will keep you up to date on what's going on. So I encourage you to sign up for our newsletters. We will also send out newsletters during the special session, keeping you up to date on what's going on. I do also expect that there will be a publication that the three of us put out following the special session. I don't know that we've solidified that, but I expect that you'll have direct written communication. So those avenues, just like regular session.
Thank you.
Miguel.
Hi, there are a lot of homes in the county that are purchased by LLCs and not necessarily single-family units. Is there any discussion about, and there are a lot of vacation rentals and a lot of empty houses, a lot of infill houses, or infill spaces. What is the legislature going to do about, or can we do anything about restricting private LLCs from buying single-family homes?
Well, I think that property rights are pretty fundamental in our country. And a lot of people have an LLC in which they own a property that's a rental for liability purposes. So that's pretty common. There is not a desire to change that. I mean, that's a pretty common way. It's for liability purposes that most do that.
Well, the follow-up question is, a lot of these homes are owned by a private owner, and there's not a lot of things you can do regarding code enforcement because they're like somewhere in a different city or a different state, and then they're not responsive to anything that the city would like to do about improving the community or that health.
The city does have the ability to get involved in that. We've given them that ability. So if it is a zoning enforcement, they absolutely have the ability to do it. It might delay things happening, but there is a lot of teeth in the city being able to act on that.
Okay, thank you.
And no, I don't want to limit private property ownership on what they get to do with their private property. I think that would be a mistake, and it would add to the availability of buildable lands and available lands for rentals.
Anyone else? You all did such a wonderful job covering session. We have no further questions at this moment. Thank you so much for your time. Now I'll turn it back to Jennifer to close out today's program. Thank you.
Should have just had Deidre do it. It's a big thank you to our legislative team. We appreciate the work, the leadership that you guys put in. Very thankful for your time to be here. Feel free to take food, to stay around and to network with each other, to talk with our legislators, but we are finished. Thank you all for coming.